Are you thinking if you should stay or if you should leave the relationship? Does your partner have narcissistic tendencies? Do you think that maybe your partner has narcissism? Then this video is going to be about 30 signs which will help you to spot narcissism in your partner. First sign is lack of empathy. They will have an inability to understand your feelings. They will not be able to understand your feelings. And they will not be able to empathize with you. They will not be able to understand where you're coming from. They will not be able to share your feelings. So they actually have a lack of empathy. Second sign is grandiosity, where they have a very exaggerated sense of self-importance, exaggerated sense of exaggerated sense of self-esteem. And they believe that they've accomplished so much in life, and they believe that everyone should give them attention. So they have this grandiose feeling, this grandiosity about them. Third side is entitlement. They feel that they are entitled for so much in the world, meaning they believe that they are so deserving and everyone should be giving them special treatment and they have special privileges, and their sense of entitlement will be very, very, very. Fourth sign is manipulativeness, where they have a special way or special technique in which they manipulate you and make you do things their way, meaning they would exploit you for their personal goals. They would manipulate you, they would control you for them to achieve their personal goals. The next sign is intense anger and rage, where they would be very angry and show rage for a very small or very petty reason. So they would have very intense and very disappropriate reactions to smaller things. So they have a high level of anger. The next sign is paranoia, meaning they will always have a suspicious mentality. They will not be able to trust the other person. They have a very low level of trust. So they would actually be suspicious about what the other person is doing. They would not be able to trust the other person easily. The next sign is hypersensitivity. They will be overly sensitive to small things. The smallest criticism or the smallest insult someone says, they would exaggerate it and react so much to it. Then they will actually blow it out of proportion. So their level of sensitivity will be very, very, very high. They're super sensitive. Hypersensitivity is another sign of narcissism. Next sign is jealousy, where they would actually feel envy and jealous about another person's accomplishment. They would actually compare themselves with the other person and then feel low and then feel jealous about it. So any other person's success with possessions will actually make them feel jealous. And the next sign is lack of guilt. So they would never feel guilty for anything that they did the whole life, meaning they would never take responsibility for their mistakes. They will not be able to recognize their mistakes. They will not be able to take responsibility for their harmful behavior or for their mistakes. They would actually have a lack of guilt. They would never feel guilty about anything. And next sign is constant need for admiration and validation. They want the other person to give them all the attention. They will want others to give all the validation that they want. They will seek constant praise and appreciation and attention from the other persons. So they need this constant validation from others. Sign is lying, where they would actually be very dishonest. They would actually be deceitful and cheat the other person. So lying is another sign of narcissistic people. The other sign of narcissistic people is everything is like a show for them. They would actually project a exaggerated image onto the world. They would have an exaggerated sense of self which they would project. The other sign is projection, where they would attribute their negative things, their mistakes and their feelings onto the other person. They would actually blame others and blame other people, and they would never take responsibility, and they would project all their feelings into the other person. The next sign is greediness, where they would have an excessive desire for wealth and excessive desire for possessions. They would want to achieve a lot of things. They would be actually very greedy about achieving things. And then the next sign is emotional coldness, where they would actually lack empathy. As I said before, they will actually have a very low level of empathy, and they'll have very less warmth, and they would be emotionally cold. The next sign of narcissism is gaslighting, where they would actually manipulate you and then make you question your own sanity. So they would actually gaslight you in a way where they control you, manipulate you, and make you things through their way, and they will also make you question your own sanity. And the next thing is being very cheap. They would be very stingy, and they would be unwilling to spend money on others. So it's a very cheap kind of stingy behavior when related to money. And the other sign is never taking responsibility for any mistake that they did, any harmful behavior that they did, anything that they did wrong, anything that they are feeling, they would actually project it onto the other person, make them feel that it is their responsibility. They would blame the other person for their failures, and they would blame the other person for their mistakes. So they keep projecting everything onto the other person, and they keep blaming others, and they would never take any responsibility. The next sign is vanity, where they would actually have a very excessive sense of concern towards their appearance and towards their image. They want to project this beautiful version out to the other world. So they have an excessive concern towards looking good and appearing good. And the next sign is controlling, where they would actually attempt to control others and they would attempt to manipulate others. They would attempt to dominate others to do things their way. So they have this controlling behavior where they want all of them to listen to what they're saying and they are super controlling. And the next sign is being unpredictable. They have this erratic or inconsistent behavior pattern, which would go up and down, where they would be fine and they would do love bombing and everything. And then immediately they'll have this unpredictable behavior, which is very erratic, which is very inconsistent, where they would go from super loving to super angry immediately. And the next sign is taking advantage of others. As I said before, they would manipulate others, they would control others, they would exploit others for their purpose. Okay. And the next sign is they would actually take pleasure in others' misfortunes. They would actually secretly feel good about another person's failure. So they take pleasure in other people's misfortunes. And the other sign is they would actually dislike being alone. They want this constant need for external validation and external attention, but they don't like being alone at all. And the next sign is maintaining poor boundaries. If you would have noticed, it's actually very difficult to maintain boundaries with a narcissistic person. So they will not be able to respect your personal space and they will not be able to respect your boundaries. They will not be able to respect your limits. And the next sign is infidelity. Mostly they would be involved in extramarital affairs, probably because of their own self-worth and self-esteem. And the next sign is not listening. They will not be able to listen to the other person. As I said before, they lack empathy and they will not be able to listen and they would actually disregard others' thoughts and feelings. You would not be able to explain yourself to them. Their listening skills would be very, very, very less. The next sign is they are super vulnerable to criticism and insults. They are very, very, very fragile. So, as I said before, they go up and down. They are very fragile to emotional distress. So, their vulnerability to criticism is very high. The next sign is being careless. They would disregard the feelings of others, they would disregard the needs for others, and they would actually be in a very careless attitude towards others. And the next sign is seductiveness. They would actually use their charm and their image and their good image to actually flatter and manipulate people. They have this very seductive kind of tendency that they will seduce the other person to make you do things their own way. So where does this narcissism come from? It's actually a deep-rooted issue. It's a deep-seated issue of self-esteem and self-regulation, where they rely on the other person. They rely on the other individuals to validate them and to appreciate them, to give them attention. So their low self-worth is actually compensated by the external validation that they seek. So they need this validation to maintain a sense of worth. So where does this narcissism come from? The origin of narcissism is basically lack of parental validation, which is needed to develop a good sense of self. Unempathetic parenting could also be a reason for people to develop narcissism in their later life. And experiencing shame and humiliation in their childhood is also a major reason for narcissistic people to turn out this way. And they would actually result in a way of using their power. They would grow to a very powerful position. They use the power to influence others, to manipulate others and get things down. And we have to realize narcissistic people are never going to change. It's very unlikely that they change. So if you decide that you are going to stay in a relationship with a narcissistic person, then there are 5 things that you can. The first thing is accepting the narcissistic person's limitations, recognizing that they're probably not going to develop empathy. They're going to probably remain the same way. They're probably not going to take responsibility for any of the things that they did. So the first step to actually maintain a relationship with a narcissistic person is to accept their limitation and to accept that, yes, this person is narcissistic and probably they're not going to change. The second step is setting clear boundaries. One of the major issues that we would usually have with a narcissistic person is setting boundaries, because they usually violate it. They would never respect boundaries. So it's very important to define your limits and probably give them consequences. So in case if they violate it, and if you ask them not to call you after 8 o'clock, and if they keep calling, probably you can give them a consequence and not to them the whole day next day. So give them a consequence if they violate. The third way that you can probably maintain a relationship with a narcissistic person is protecting your own self emotionally. So don't involve in arguments and don't involve in fights where You can see that this person is not going to change. This person is not going to understand. And there's no way you can make them understand what you're saying. So just walk out or withdraw from any conflicts or any fights, understanding that this is not going to resolve. And the fourth thing that you can do is prioritize your own well being and maintain a very good support system. So look out for your family, look out for your friends who can support you with, and probably even a therapist who can help you be in this relationship if that's what you want. And the fifth sign is managing expectations. Understand that your expectations are not going to be met. So realistically assess the situation and just understand what can be expected and what cannot be expected out of this relationship. And in case if you decide to leave the relationship, then it's very good. I would say there are 5 things that you can do to leave the relationship if the person is narcissistic. The first thing is not leave planning. So plan and have a strategy, because usually it's very difficult to come out of a relationship which is involved with a narcissistic person. So have a clear strategy and have a clear plan. Also include all the financial and the legal considerations, and then have a strategy and have a plan. The second thing is seek support. Have friends and family and even a therapist who would understand you and who would help you through this process. So you cannot do this alone. So make sure that you have a support system with you to get you through this process. And the third step is establish clear boundaries. Cutting off contact is a beautiful way where you can come out of the relationship and you don't have to be in contact with this person to avoid future manipulation. So make sure that you establish clear boundaries. And the fourth step is focus on your own healing. Address the damage, because it's very damaging to you when you be in a relationship with a narcissistic person. So understand what damage is caused and focus on your own healing and heal yourself before you get into another relationship. The fifth thing that you can do after you come out of a relationship with a narcissistic person is avoid going into a future narcissistic relationship. Many mistakes that we all do is once you come out of a relationship with a narcissistic person, we also get into a relationship with another narcissistic person. So recognize the red flags and then set healthy boundaries and make sure that it's a secure relationship and make sure that the person is not narcissistic, and then get into another relationship.
It's easy to be happy.